It's 5 p.m. here in Lagos, Nigeria. You're watching The World Today. I'm Joca Rogers. Here's what's coming up. Of spying and sabotage. Plus, at least 19 people killed, thousands displaced after heavy rains triggered flooding in Myanmar. The World Today begins right now. Politics in the U.S. now. Vice President Kamala Harris has held a campaign rally in Greensboro, North Carolina. Ms. Harris took a swing at former President Donald Trump's performance at the presidential debate, calling it as the same old show. Speaking about her plans for the American people, the vice president hinted that she will give a $50,000 tax deduction for startup businesses.
It was the same old show. Same old tired playbook we've heard for years, with no plan for how he would address the needs of the American people. Well, folks, look, it's time to turn the page. So I have a plan for you, and my plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction for startup businesses. Because I understand not everybody liked the person that was on the stage with me the other night gets handed $400 million on a silver platter and then files for bankruptcy 6 times. Come on. Just Google Project 2025. I see you have. It is a detailed and dangerous blueprint for what he will do if he is elected president. Donald Trump will give billionaires massive cuts, massive tax cuts, and cut corporate taxes by over $1 trillion, even as they pull down record profits. He intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. And he wants to impose what I call a Trump sales tax on everyday basic necessities, which will cost the average American family nearly $4,000 a year.
Meanwhile, Republican presidential candidate and former President Donald Trump took his own campaign rally to Tucson, Arizona. Speaking during the rally, Mr. Trump pledged no taxes for overtime workers in the country. He has previously said he would seek legislation to end the taxation of tips to aid service workers in the United States. Ms. Harris has also made similar pledges.
The people who work overtime are among the hardest working citizens in our country. And for too long, no one in Washington has been looking out for them. Those are the people. They really work. As everyone saw 2 nights ago, we had a monumental victory over Comrade Kamala Harris in the presidential debate. Kamala Harris said that no state allows abortion in the 9th month, which is a complete and total lie. They do. They do. And even after birth, in some cases, she claimed, I want to monitor women's pregnancies. I don't want to do that. I don't want to. It's a total lie. I don't want to do that. Women, I won't be following you around to the hospital monitoring. She claims she doesn't support mass gun confiscation, when in fact she supported it entirely, and through her entire career, think of that, she wants to confiscate your guns. Does anybody in the audience have a gun? Raise your hand. But the public was not fooled. They saw right through it. Kamala's lies and unprecedented partisan interference of 2 low-life anchors, their low-lives. For them to do what they did, and they wouldn't correct her on like Project 25. I don't know what the hell it is. I purposely have not read it. I could, but I don't want to, because they never had my authorization. So because we've done 2 debates and because they were successful, there will be no 3rd debate.
Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird joins us for more. Maria, great to see you. It's been 3 days after the presidential debate, and both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump still can't stop talking about their first ever face-off, and everything they said about each other. What were the take-homes for many Americans?
Well, many Americans, this was a must-watch debate. This was one that so many Americans were tuned in at 9 p.m. Eastern time, looking to see what was it that the former president was going to be discussing. How was he going to combat this former prosecutor, the Vice President Kamala Harris? We know that they have never even met before. This is the first time they'd ever even been in each other's presence in a formal way. And so this event that really is what it was. The debate was really an event that Americans were hoping to get greater context around their platforms. Many of the analysts and some Americans, whether they were Republican or Democrat, did feel that the vice president had an upper hand in this debate, felt that she was able to project and to give her positions and give her thoughts on the very clear and dominant issues of today in the U.S., and that she was able to clearly articulate that. Some were not also impressed with the way in which the former president was able to present himself. I do think, though, many people were thinking there might have been a few more contentious moments, even though there were some, but they were able to get through the debate without very egregious disrespect or things of that nature, which I think many Americans were wondering if that was going to happen. But this debate is one that I think will go down in history. As you heard the former president say, there will be no third debate. We've heard there's talks around one maybe in Arizona in October, but maybe that will not happen. Only time will tell to see if that does happen. But Americans were looking to hear clear messages, and I think that the reason for the continued discussions as they're on the campaign trail is to ensure that Americans really understood their positions as what they stated in the debate, because obviously there was so much going on that evening and a lot of very heavy topics to discuss.
And how are Democrats and Republicans reacting to the face-off? Many wonder if the candidates really did appeal to American voters this time.
This, to be honest, I think many Americans were glad to see it. They were waiting for the day to be able to see them debate. They were waiting to see a true comparison between the two candidates, because we're really in a time, unfortunately, where you have two very vastly different candidates. And so many people, whether they're Republican or they're Democrat, they're really looking at the person and the person that will potentially lead the country. We've heard many Republicans say that they are going to vote for Kamala Harris. I would not be surprised if we don't hear that there are Democrats that potentially could vote for Donald Trump. So we're in a place now where it's really about what resonates with me as an American. What are the core issues that I want addressed? How I want more money in my pocket, dealing with the really stressed economy that we've had over the last few years. So they're looking for those answers versus necessarily looking at the party, at the candidate.
And away from the debate, Maria, let's talk about Hurricane Francine that made landfall across southern Louisiana. We've seen Super Typhoon Yagi wreak havoc across Asia, the devastating floods in northeast Nigeria. What measures are being put in place, in terms of warnings, evacuations, and flood alerts to neighboring states?
Yeah, so Louisiana, unfortunately, does see quite a bit of hurricane devastation during this time of the year. And so there are all types of levees in place. Obviously, in the New Orleans area, there's a lot done to secure the levees after Hurricane Katrina. And so there's been infrastructure put in place and infrastructure reinvestments to ensure that when we do have these type of storms, that there could be some sustenance in the community to try to avoid major devastation. But we do know that evacuations are underway for those communities that are right there at the eye of the storm. It is, as you mentioned, Category 2 storm. This storm, we know that can change over time. Obviously, keeping people off the roads, closing schools down to ensure that the people are not on the roads and that they're in safe areas. and telling everyone to just take shelter and to go as inland as possible away from the eye of the storm.
Right, Maria, thank you for your time. Well, North Korea has released the first ever photos of its leader, Kim Jong-un, touring a uranium enrichment facility, calling for more centrifuges to boost his country's nuclear weapons. Pyongyang, which is facing a slew of United Nations sanctions for pursuing its banned weapons programs, has previously never publicly disclosed details of its uranium enrichment facility since its first nuclear test in 2006. Enriched uranium is essential in the manufacturing of nuclear warheads. The still photograph shows Mr. Kim walking past rows of centrifuges and talking to military officials. The publication comes amid heightened tension on the Korean peninsula. Reacting to this, the South Korean government said it strongly condemns the North's plans to increase production. Around 80 villagers have been evacuated amid a devastating wildfire in the mountains of southwestern France. Authorities said the blaze, which broke out mid-afternoon on Thursday, was now under control after a worrisome start. According to the firefighting department, the wildfire spread across 400 hectares of ground as 5 firefighters sustained light injuries and 2 were taken to hospital, while 1 house was slightly damaged. A total of 800 firefighters, 9 airplanes and 3 helicopters were deployed at the height of the wildfire. At least 19 people have been killed in Myanmar after heavy rains triggered severe flooding in the country. Rescue operations is ongoing as some 3,600 people have been evacuated to safer areas on boats. Schools in flood-affected areas have been closed and residents have been warned of rising flood water levels. About a third of Myanmar's 55 million people require humanitarian assistance, but many aid agencies, such as the International Committee of the Red Cross, cannot operate in many areas because of access restrictions and security risks. More flooding disasters now over in northeast Nigeria, where 37 people are dead and 58 others injured so far as a result of heavy flooding in Borno State. Over 1 million people are affected one way or the other, and some of these survivors have been recounting their experiences as they take shelter in temporary camps across the capital, Maiduguri. Business owners also count their losses. Some markets, like the Gamboru perishable market, which was completely submerged, has temporarily relocated to the stadium.
Areas experienced excess water flow into their homes. By Monday this week, most areas along the waterways and flood-prone areas were already flooded. By Tuesday morning, houses, markets, shops, and public infrastructure were already submerged. Hundreds of thousands of residents escaped the flood with little or no belongings. While some slept on the streets, others relocated to relatives living in safer locations. The state government directed all affected victims to take shelter in camps and schools while the floods receded. Some of the survivors who made it to the camps recount their experience.
We were home when they called to inform us that flood has submerged Budum. I have relatives there. While on my way there, I was called back that my area has been flooded too.
Search and rescue operations commenced on Wednesday as the flood continued to recede. By Thursday, September the 12th, the waters had receded in most locations, while some parts of the cities were still combating the floods. As regards economic activities, some shop owners recount their experience after the floods.
It was around 2 a.m. that we got the information, according to the sources of the people that told us that a flood has started coming to take over our area.
At least more than 500 shops are affected. And you know that some shops are there with 2 people, 3 people inside the same shop. So if you calculate more than 500 shops by human beings, you will find out that people will be more than 1,000 people.
I make more profits. This is because those that were trapped by the flood, when they are rescued, we pay us higher fares to take them to safer places. To provide for their families, survivors continue with their trade in the camps. Owing to the blockage of the major connecting roads across the state capital, the Biu-Damboa Road has experienced increased vehicular movement, causing traffic jams as some of the camps, perishable markets, and other businesses have shifted to that axis of the city.
Welcome back to the program. Let's get more on the situation in Borno State, northeast Nigeria, the state capital, Maiduguri, which has been devastated by flooding. Joining us now is founder Advocacy for Human Value, Fatima Habib. She's on ground in Maiduguri, aiding efforts at evacuation and all of the forms of help needed, really, by the people. Fatima, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So earlier this week, you said the main problem is where to evacuate people to, as IDP camps are already overwhelmed by the influx of people. What other options are available for people right now?
Thank you for your continued concern. Yes, the lack of suitable evacuation center and IDP camps remain like a significant challenge to us right now. People are now forced to sleep on the ground, and some people are forced to go back to the place that we have rescued them because they feel like it's better to be in their homes, despite the fact that there are water, there is still water, than to go back to the streets. And people that used to live in a good place now do not even have those facilities that they used to enjoy. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people are forced to leave, are forced to become IDPs by force. So it's a very challenging thing. But at the moment, people are advocating and saying a lot of things. Maybe the international organizations and government can provide a temporary shelter. And in Borno, we have mega schools. So we have been evacuating people, taking them to mega schools and all of that. The entire mega schools are also filled up. So it is just, there is no way for the rescued victims to be taken.
Right. And the governor, Babagana Zulum, was at one of the IDP camps on Wednesday. He was giving out 10,000 naira to residents at the camp. I remember asking, where are they going to spend that money, seeing as they are surrounded by water?
Exactly. My thought as well, because at the moment what we need is no more money. We do not need money, because if you where are they going food materials that they are going to survive with? Even if they do get the food materials that they are going to survive with, how are they going to cook with it? And in the town now, there is no way you can find places that you buy food and all of affecting people. How are you able to sell bread 100 naira before, and now you're selling it 500 naira because of this condition that advantage of these calamities, and they are extracting people, they are exploiting people with it. And honestly, I don't feel like it is very important for people.
We lost audio there with the founder advocacy for human value, Fatima Habib, who's on ground in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital. Hers is one of those organizations helping in any way they can to get people to safety, to remove them from the waters. And as ongoing help is continuing for people in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital in northeast Nigeria. Other stories now. The United States is seeking for newer areas of cooperation with the Nigerian Navy in order to keep the Gulf of Guinea and the global maritime space safer for business and economic activities. This is part of the discussion at the naval headquarters in Lagos, where the flag officer of the Western Naval Command, Rear Admiral Mustafa Hassan, mentioned that the upgrade of its regional maritime capability center would be a way to go.
We gave him a brief on our constitutional role and our challenges and area we think we can improve upon and work together towards making the global maritime economy much better placed. I can't really go into details on things we talked about, but the one I think I can tell you about is about enhancing or upgrading the sensor capabilities of the regional maritime awareness capability system. It's in good order and working, but we think we want an upgrade to put us in better state amongst other leading nations of the world. So we're happy to receive you here today, Your Excellency. It's been a wonderful time. Thank you.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Ambassador Richard Mills, who seizes the opportunity to introduce the new naval attaches, gives the Navy a thumbs up, while also indicating interest in expanding the scope of cooperation with Nigeria.
It was very important to me on my first official trip to Lagos to come here and to deliver the message how important our partnership is with the Nigerian Navy and ensuring that the Gulf of Guinea can be as free as possible from piracy, oil theft, unregulated, unreported fishing. And our partnership is very, very important. And as the Vice Admiral said, we've been talking about how to strengthen it and what more we can do. Well, one is exercises, naval exercises between our two navies to improve coordination. I think a lot of things are working well. Our intelligence sharing, our training capabilities. The Vice Admiral did his job and shared with me some new assets and equipment that might be helpful. So we'll be looking at that.
Europe is facing an existential challenge, and that's according to a landmark report by the former president of the European Central Bank, Mario Draghi. The report comes at a time when the continent's share of global GDP is shrinking, and Europe is failing to keep up with China and the United States. For all this, I'm joined by DW correspondent Marie Sinha in Berlin. Marie, great to see you. How badly is Europe's economy falling behind?
Well, according to this new report, it's bad. Former president of the European Central Bank, Mario Draghi, highlights that since 2000, the disposable income in the United States has grown twice as fast as in Europe. So after people pay their taxes and their rent, they have much more money to spend in the US than in Europe. And on top of that, productivity in Europe, so the amount of goods and services that are produced, is lower than that in the United States. And Mario Draghi says that a lot of this decline is happening because Europe's economy is stuck in the past. He says that Europe missed out on the digital revolution and that it hasn't diversified its economy. So the European companies that were the biggest companies 20 years ago are still the biggest now, whereas in China and the United States, new tech giants are flourishing, and Europe is simply missing those types of companies. Draghi also points out that Europe is losing its unicorns, not meaning the magical creatures, of course, but startups worth more than $1 billion. 30% of Europe's unicorns end up relocating to the United States. So the extra jobs and money those startups create get lost for Europe.
And what solutions are out there for the continent's economy?
According to this report, what's needed to lift Europe out of its economic decline is money. A lot of money. Draghi says Europe should invest twice as much money into its economy as it did when it was rebuilding after the Second World War. And to get those large sums of cash, Draghi is calling on the EU to take on debt together as a bloc. So for all 27 member states to take on debt together as a group. Right now, that's not within the rights of the EU. Member states take on debt individually. And the report also says that the EU needs to strengthen its tech sector, so make it easier for people to innovate and build new companies, for example, by getting rid of regulations and red tape. And Draghi also stressed that Europe is too reliant on other countries, especially on China. At the moment, Europe depends on China for a lot of its raw materials and technology. And instead, Draghi says Europe should find new suppliers by making new trade agreements with other countries with a lot of resources. So the report is a scathing diagnosis and advises strong medicine.
And how has the report been received or perceived by European capitals?
Well, France and Germany are the two countries people are watching now. They are the biggest countries in Europe and will need to get on board for this plan to even stand the slightest chance. And for Germany, the big red flag in this report is the idea of issuing common debt. Germany has rejected giving more power to the EU, to Brussels, over economic policy in the past. And German Finance Minister Christian Lindner has already come out and criticized the report for exactly this point. German politicians want each member state to continue overseeing their own finances. Now, France is also in a difficult situation because it's currently actually spending too much money, so the state is taking on too much debt, and it will be a tough balancing act in the country to cut back spending on its own economy, but increase spending on the European economy as a whole. So experts are saying that this is a monumental report, no question, but for European countries, for all 27 member states to agree to enact it will be a tremendous challenge.
Thanks again, Marie. We're closing now. China has set a new Guinness World Record with a spectacular drone show in Shenzhen featuring 8,100 synchronized drones lighting up the sky. The event dazzled residents of the city as thousands of drones soared and formed breathtaking figures and patterns, creating a visual spectacle that pushed the boundaries of drone technology. Synchronized drones created a series of stunning displays, forming intricate shapes like dragons, flowers, and abstract designs, showcasing the potential of unmanned aerial vehicles in creating large-scale aerial art. The display, which captivated onlookers, now holds the record for the largest number of unmanned aerial vehicles used in a single show. The achievement has been officially recorded in the Guinness Book World of Records. Such beauty. Well, thank you so much for joining us all week long. I'm Joker Rogers. See you next week.